This is where the fun begins, and one of my favorite parts is simulating the fancy clothing geometry we created in Marvelous Designer, brought it into Houdini, fixed it up so Houdini and Vellum Solver would understand what to do. Houdini's Vellum Solver can simulate clothing really well, and I find it very satisfying to watch my character walk around in the clothing I created from scratch because it looks really good. Actually, let me drop another one because the point numbers have changed after you weld it. Now, see, once I select it, it's selecting the entire jacket. That means the entire jacket is actually one piece now, which is perfect. It's welded. This is what you need. That still does not solve all our issues. If you look back here carefully, I actually have pockets. Now these pockets are sewn on. So they're physical. Let me try and take them out. They're actually the actual pockets. So there's no hole here. There's physically another layer of geometry on top of it. Now let me select the pair of pants. This is not helping because we're not selecting the pockets. The pockets are not being fused onto the pair of pants. And I find that the Houdini's Vellum Solver, you have to stitch the pockets on. In the Vellum constraints, there is a stitch constraint that you can choose. So we're going to get into that in just a bit. Now, there is something that we need to know. There's a visibility node that we can use to help us because as you can see here, well, as you can't see here, the jacket is actually covering part of the pocket. So it's making it really hard to select the stitch line. I can't really go behind the jacket. And that's where the visibility comes in. You drop down the visibility node and it will hide whatever geometry you want without changing the geometry itself, which is important because you don't want to change the point numbers. When you select something, it's selecting by point number. If the point numbers change and you put back the geometry, well, whatever you selected is wrong. So visibility only hides the geometry in the viewport. And this is very handy because you need the point numbers to stay intact. So I'm hiding everything but the pockets here. This is very handy. But I'm gonna, after I'm done, I'll just ignore this visibility, which is perfect. And I think I just messed up the viewport, which is fine. That comes to the pocket stitches. Now let me turn back the visibility again because I just want the pockets. Now let's go back to group. Let me select the stitch points to show you how to select it. So let's choose points. Select this guy. Now make sure you have this selected. This is really important too. Then I'm going to come to the viewport and I'm going to left click. So I want the stitch line around the pocket, but I don't want the entire outline because I want to leave the top unstitched. It's a physical pocket. Like you can put your hand in it and stuff. I'm going to select this one. So I don't want to paint. Sorry. I want the box selection. I want to select. And I don't want to get rid of this 3D because I don't want to select that. Get rid of that. Okay. Click this. Left click it once. It's selected. Hold down Shift. Well, hold down A. Sorry. Hold down A on your keyboard and just hover your mouse over it. And you'll see that it's trying to draw a line throughout the pocket geometry onto the points that are connected. It's finding the shortest path between where your mouse is to the first point that you selected. That's the power of holding down A. Now I want this guy. Now what we want is this, right? We want to go around, but it doesn't know that because I want this side to be open. So we have to do one side at a time. So click this. So I want this. Left click this then. Let go. It's selected. Now to get the second seam line, hold down Shift to tell Houdini I want to select more. Then hold down A. So A and Shift. And if you need to rotate the camera, Alt as well. But let go of Alt when you're done. So I'm going to come here, and this is the next one I want to select. Now left click it. Let go. Move the camera around. Looks good. A and Shift. Hover over. Left click. Okay. And then Alt, camera motion. Looks good. This is what I need. Now don't forget to press Enter while this mouse is over the viewport. This is super important. It's all about where the position of the mouse is. So this mouse has to be over the viewport and then press Enter. Otherwise, you have to do it all over again. And I think something went wrong because I think I have to do it all over again. I seem to have lost it. Okay, let me try this again. Okay, so we have something in here now. It looks like it worked. So that's how you select the pocket stitch lines. So I've done that on both sides of the pocket. Now we don't need this visibility anymore, so I'm going to ignore it because I want to see the rest of the geometry. Now I've also selected different groups over here just because I will show you why though. Without these points, so I'm just going to ignore all of these and I'm going to run it through the simulator and you'll see what happens, and hopefully you'll realize why I have these extra pins, these pin groups. Now we convert this entire clothing geometry into a vellum cloth, and all we have to do is just throw down a vellum constraint node, vellum cloth. So vellum configure cloth. That is what we need. I don't like. This is left on the default parameters. I don't think I made any changes, except for the density. I made it a little bit more heavier. I believe the only thing I changed. So for those of you who have seen my vellum beginner videos, this would be a breeze. The only difficulty is, or anything new, is the vellum attach, because I do attach these pins, which I'm gonna go over later. So I'm gonna ignore this. I want to show you what it looks like before you attach them. And I have another one. This is the stitch for the pockets. Now I'm going to ignore this as well because I want to show you what happens before we stitch it all up. And let's run the simulator. Now you can see that the pockets are just falling off because they're not stitched on. And I'm going to run it for a few more frames because the jacket is going to fall off as well. It's just going to slide off. Because the jacket is the mannequin skin is frictionless. I didn't set up like a realistic collision sort of for it. Like it's complicated to get skin type friction on it. The easiest way is just to pin parts of the jacket onto your character, and you go like, okay, the jacket is never supposed to leave the shoulders unless you're doing, at least not for this walk cycle. So you can see that the jacket is falling off, and if you look carefully, the pants are actually falling off too, but just slowly because the pants are really tight, but it is falling off. Yeah, let's take a look at what this looks like. Go all the way back. The pants started out pretty high. As you slowly scroll over, the pants are falling. You can see here it's getting loose and loose and loose. It's coming down. But because the pants were made so tightly fit on this character, it's not falling completely off, or it's not falling as fast. I do have a waistband here. So all we have to do to prevent the pants from falling off is to select the point on the waistband and pin it onto the character itself and tell Houdini, okay, it's not supposed to leave the character's waist. And that should hold the pants in place. The same thing with the shoulders on the jacket. So that goes back to the pins, the pin groups I have set up over here. Now I'm gonna put them back. Here I just have selected a few points on the shoulders of the jacket, and I've called it pins. Then I selected the waist. Now this is selected on the pants itself, so it's the waist. So this is the top part of the pants, and this is using that A, holding down A to select that outline. But I also, the waistband has thickness. Hopefully you can see this part over here is the waist, like all that. Now you can throw down a group expand. So this will just expand the points of your selection. So it will just expand it by 2 steps, which is just enlarging the selection, going down on the waistband. Perfect. It doesn't have to go all the way to the tip, just for this simple walk cycle, or any other case. I believe this should work for most cases. Next are the ankles, because I actually have ankle bands. So I do use the same trick. If we look carefully, there is a lot of wrinkling over here, just so I wanted more interesting wrinkles on the ends. So I put a waist or an ankle band on the character's foot, on the pants. And what it'll create is these nice, interesting wrinkles here. Otherwise, it would just be straight. And that wouldn't illustrate some of the nice features of Vellum and a marvelous designer. So there are your ankle bands, and that's using the same trick as before, selecting the outline on the bottom and using the group expanding it upwards, because there's nowhere else to go but up. We have all those groups, and we're gonna feed it into the vellum constraints. Now, the first vellum constraint we have here is the attach. So what you do is you type in vellum constraint. So that's this one. Put it down, hook it up to the vellum clothing, into your chain. And what you do here, I'm going to highlight black because we're not going to be using this one. I already have one set up. And you come over here and you want to select your type. What type is it? Well, I want to attach the geometry. I want to attach it to something. I want to attach it to the character. So that's what I want. Now, what am I attaching? It's attaching everything right now. You can see these white lines. That's what it's trying to attach. I don't want to attach everything. What I do want to attach is the points. I don't want to attach by primitives. Points. What it is, well, we have our pins. Pins 1, pin 2, and pins 3. Not the stitch. We're not doing this yet. Pocket stitches is the next one. So that's a different constraint. So let's take a look. Now, it got rid of all those white lines. So does that mean we're not attaching anything? Look a little bit more carefully. Because the pins are so close to the skin, you're not going to see those white lines anymore. If you look closely, you'll see it. It's very close to it. So it is, there's their waistband. And here is the shoulders pins. And let's see, we still have the ankles. There you go. See, they're all there. And it is getting attached to the character. You'll see a line, like a thin white line that goes from each pin group to the character. That's the attach over here. Let's go on to the stitching. I'm going to throw down another one just to show you. It's the same vellum constraints. I'm going to highlight this block. Now what you want to do here is choose the right constraint. So we're going to do stitch. Now stitch points, that's what we need. Next, we're stitching the points. So this is what we need. One, we're not using primitives, we're using points. And let's select that group that we already had. Pocket stitches. That's what we already selected. That's these back. Instantly, you'll see these purple circles highlighted on the viewport, indicating that these are the stitch points. Now, where do we want to attach these? This time it's a little different. You have to actually tell Houdini where you want them. We're attaching it to points. What's the target group? Well, that's everything. It's everything. It's choosing the closest points from the clothing geometry that's closest to our stitched lines on the pockets. And that would be the pants. What is the target group? Everything. Just put an asterisk on. And because we have this constraint to closest point, Houdini will automatically figure out what is the closest point to these stitch lines, to the stitch group that you selected. And it works out because Marvelous Designer, if you've done your clothing correctly, Marvelous Designer will have topology already outlining this pocket, which makes it perfect. Okay, let me hide the jacket first. Hide pattern, and I want to show you the topology. You can see this, hopefully you can see this red, very faint red outline of the pocket on the pants. That's called an internal line created in Marvelous Designer on the pants first before you create the pocket. And this will create the geometry ahead of time. So I'm going to turn on mesh. Then we can see the topology follows this red outline. So it actually creates topology according to the internal lines in Marvelous Designer. And this is very important because we're going to have to import it back into Houdini and it has to make sense. If the pocket geometry does not line up with the topology on the pants, it's going to stitch it in a weird place and you're going to get wrinkles like in weird places. Keep that in mind. Let me delete this. Now let's go back to the Vellum Solver and let's resim this. And this time, let's come see how it looks like. Okay, as you can see, the pockets are intact. They're not falling off. That's one thing. And the pants are not falling off. So let's slowly rewind this. It's not falling off at all. And what's even more important, the jacket is not sliding off the shoulders. It's staying on the shoulders. So that's about it. And I have some camera tracking here, and that goes into a different how do you track the character using the camera tracking, because the character is inside the geometry context. It makes it a little harder for the camera to track it. I have that in a different video though. It's not the focus of this video. So I'm able to track it. So I'll put a link to the other video, maybe at the end of this video as a card, as one of those end cards. In the next and should be last video of this mini series, I'll show you how to fix the material slots so you can render this clothing inside of Houdini's Karma rendering engine. Thanks for watching and sticking to the end.